Transparency is an important part of the tax system. It's been important for this government, but I think it's increasingly important internationally. It is a means to ensuring better collection. But against that, you do need to trade the need for the preservation of taxpayer confidentiality. And there's inevitably a conflict between the needs of confidentiality, which support good tax raising, and transparency, which support the integrity and confidence which the public should have in tax systems.
It clearly is a generational change that is going on. We talk in every environment, the internet and technology has changed things, and I think we have to say that that has a role in the tax and transparency debate as well. And yeah, I think generally people want to be able to access information and look it up, and I think there's a need for companies to respond to this.
At the moment you have a situation where there's very little consensus between different stakeholder groups on what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. The same sorts of concepts seem to be regarded by big business as plain vanilla. Sometimes they're incentivised by governments, but when they're revealed publicly they provoke outrage.
One can make judgment calls as to whether what a particular company is doing is the right thing to do or not. And that's where I think it's going to be much more difficult, unless you actually have proper explanations as to why you are doing what you're doing. There's a danger that it can be misunderstood. And I mean no disrespect to the public. I'm not saying that the public aren't bright enough to come to their own conclusions, but they need the proper information to come to a proper conclusion.
You only have to look at some of the coverage of tax matters that has happened in the newspapers to know that there is absolute misunderstanding of what the numbers are saying on many occasions. But I also get the argument that's been put to me by some of the NGOs that refusing to publish data on the basis that people won't understand it is something like the church refusing to publish the Bible in the vernacular. Sooner or later, you have to make sure that people are sufficiently educated to be able to understand what their data is saying. And it must therefore be the responsibility of business to make sure that they are educating people to understand the information they're giving.
We've seen a variety of different ways in which businesses have tried to be more transparent on their tax policies, and that's by setting out the contribution that they make, whether that's on their website or in their financial statement, or even just talking to their employees. All of those are good examples of the way so that businesses can be more transparent on tax.
We've seen great stuff in terms of companies saying, we have some principles. What we want to see now is what's the behaviour that's changed as a result of having these principles. Because I think if nothing's changed, then the principles look a lot like spin. And they're not principles, they're a way to try and fob people off. So that's kind of the big step in terms of companies being willing to show what they do differently, or if everything was great beforehand and nothing's had to change, then to kind of demonstrate to people why that was good and be able to back that up rather than just saying, well, we have those principles, trust us, we follow them.
Stakeholders are just going to continue to ask for this information, so sooner or later it will be published.
I think the transparency debate will now move beyond transparency about data and start to focus on things like corporate attitude to tax risk and how businesses are structured in order to deliver that level of risk. What's a company's tax strategy and how is it organised in order to deliver that strategy? And I think an interesting evolution of the transparency debate will be to move beyond data and start talking about behaviour.
One of the issues around all the conversations around transparency and accountability is we do end up kind of forgetting the accountability side of things, and I think that's really what the purpose of the transparency agenda is it's to get that accountability. And similarly, we get caught in this idea that this is all about bashing big companies, and some companies behave terribly and they deserve to be held to account. But there's the other side in terms of how do we actually hold governments accountable for the tax systems as well. And so I think we need transparency across a wide agenda of the tax system so that actually we can get people involved in the debate about how do we get the tax system that works for all of us.